Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday at AARP. I'm Ann Hales, your host, and I'm the Associate State Director of Community Outreach in Central Alabama. Today, we are so excited to have Mayor Stephen Reed with us. Thank you, Mayor Reed, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Thank you for having me.
I know that, and especially this week, because you have some really great things going on. The celebration or commemoration of the 65th anniversary for the Montgomery bus boycott is going on. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those activities, and then we'll get into some of the other questions about Montgomery?
Sure. Well, this year we're celebrating the 65th anniversary of the bus boycott, and we have had a number of events already take place. We've had an essay contest for high school students. We're also going to be doing a scavenger hunt around the city and the historic area, so people can learn about where certain events took place and what happened there, when, and why. We're also going to be having free tours at the Rosa Parks Museum, and we had a big kickoff yesterday with the unveiling of a sculpture at Maxwell Air Force Base. And so we'll have events all the way through December 7th, capped off with a documentary on this Saturday.
Okay. A lot of really good things, and some virtual too, so people who are not leaving their home can get out and take part in these festivities too. So thank you for doing that. We have a lot of questions today, and that we'll ask this morning, and we have some from our volunteers who have submitted. And anyone who is listening in, if you have questions for the mayor, please be sure and put those in the comments. We would like to address those today during this. Mayor Reed, let's start out with looking at your first year. You've been in a little more than a year as the mayor. A first year as mayor has got to be a challenge anyway. But you came in just a few months later, the pandemic hit and really presented problems that it presents to everybody. But how did that affect your plans for the city? Because you had already kicked off some task forces, some committees had already informed you with the plans that you were making. You were really taking off, and then boom, this hit. So what did you have to do to pivot, and what kind of changes did you have to make going forward?
Well, thank you for the question. We had an unforeseen circumstance that no mayor around the country probably could have, been prepared for. We've all been discussing among ourselves how to deal with this. And I think for us, one of the things that we did was we pressed pause on a lot of the initiatives. This happened in our first 100 days in office. And it was one of the things that we wanted to just make sure we were conservative in our approach with everything financially. And so we cut our expenses across the board 10%, which is something I don't typically favor. But in this case, we thought it was necessary after conferring with Betty Beeville, our director of finance here. And so we had to change a lot of our priorities that were in the budget. A lot of our cabinet level directors had to adjust their priorities, and we really just had to kind of hunker down for 3 or 4 months before we could get a sense of where things were. And then after that, we've kind of just stayed real slow and kind of tabled some of the non-essential work and some of the non-essential projects that we may have had going, just so we can make sure we were on sound financial ground. And that was really the approach that we took where this was concerned. And now that we're in a new budget year, we believe we have a better approach and a better sense of where things are going to be in terms of our revenue and how that will impact us. So we feel somewhat more stable as long as we aren't surprised anymore by the longevity of this global pandemic.
So what are some of the things that you're most proud of then in 2020 that you were able to get through and still do, that you didn't have to necessarily pull back on or completely eliminate for temporarily?
Well, I think the first thing that we're the most proud of is the investment in our public schools. That was an initiative that we partnered with the school board, our county commission, and our state legislators to really push for an increased investment in our public schools, because we see that as being vital to a thriving economy and a thriving community. And we thought that that was something that we had to do this year, because we want to send a signal not only to the community, but to some of our partners here, both corporate and military, that we are really primed for a new Montgomery that is positioning itself for a brighter future. And we thought, what better statement to make to our longtime residents, students and teachers and parents, than to show them that we realize we've been asking for more than we've been investing in terms of the expectations regarding our public schools. And we just couldn't get by on a cheaper is better philosophy in a global economy like this. So that's probably the number one thing. I think second is the reduction in crime overall. Crime overall has gone down by almost 20%. And year over year, we're strong there, although I'm certainly disappointed by the violent crime numbers that we have. So that, that's kind of been a mixed bag, but I think that would be the second part. And then third, we've had some tremendous economic announcements, from Hyundai announcing, the building of 2 new vehicles within the last calendar year. We've had some other significant announcements out with our industrial park and the service and manufacturing arena. And we've had some great tech initiatives that I believe will position us not only to be a stronger part of the knowledge-based economy, but also will strengthen our entrepreneurial presence right here in Montgomery in the River region.
Great. Going back and talking about the crime and safety in the city, one of the things that you started was a civilian review board. Tell me a little bit about that. And can people get involved in that?
Well, the Civilian Review Board is something that we proposed to the City Council 3 months ago in the wake of the protests after the killing of George Floyd. We met with activists around this community and asked them what we could do to bring about more trust and transparency between our police department and the community, and that's what they asked for. And so we responded by presenting that to the council, which has to vote on it in order for it to be adopted. The council has not voted on it at this time, but I just reminded them last night in the council meeting that it had been 90 days and it had been more than enough time, I think, for us to have had public meetings and for us to move forward on a citizens review board that would allow each council member to appoint a member, as well as the mayor to appoint several members to the police review board to review officer involved incidents. That's not every incident that an officer is involved in. They have to reach a certain scale and scope in order to reach the Citizens Review Board. And at that time, any recommendations can be made back to the police chief and the mayor based on what the Citizens Review Board would have found. However, we still need the city council to hold those public hearings and ultimately to vote on this. And hopefully they'll do that sooner rather than later.
Okay. We have a question concerning this a little bit from Wanda Jean Lomax McCall, who says, what are your plans to include in your Forward Momentum initiative to encourage people, especially seniors, to become more active in their communities, which should help deter crime?
Well, excuse me.
That's right.
One of the things that we want to do is we want this to be a quality place for everyone, regardless of age, race, or income. And we believe that we have a strong Parks and Recreation department and a strong city events department, but we have to make sure that in a post-COVID era, we're positioning that unique space for our city to provide a better product and a better quality of place. And so for us, it's important that we revamp and reassess some of our programs that we have to meet people where they are right now. So we want to get seniors out of their house. We want to get seniors into places of public interaction and things that they want to do. And so whether that is, health related, whether that is financial literacy and things along those lines, or if that's just some general group activities, we want to make sure that we have more spaces in Montgomery through our partnerships with many nonprofits here to bring that forward. And we believe that if we can do that, then people feel more comfortable about their community, their neighborhood, and people will feel more engaged and will feel like they can become more of a part where they live. I think if we do that, and if we create some additional mentoring programs between our seniors and between whether it be new parents or couples and things along those lines with the faith-based community and civic organizations, then we'll have a better sense of what's going on and where some of our problem areas are. That will then lead to proactive solutions that we think will help our city and our overall crime numbers.
Well, this really fits into the comprehensive plan, right? With enhancing parks and services, and even improving sidewalks and being more walkable. So that kind of leads me, and I have a couple of questions about that. But one of those questions really has to do with the community centers. You have talked about renovating it or kind of reestablishing these community centers. But what do you envision with these, and who all will be involved in this? Is this something for people of all ages? Is this a community gathering space, and where will these be?
Well, the community centers and our reinvestment in those community centers have already started at Houston Hill, Capitol Heights, and McIntyre. So one is just getting some of the facilities up to speed. Second will then be the programming in those facilities. And then third will be the partnerships that we hope to create. So we're going to use the existing community centers that we have, but we're also looking at spaces like the place right next to Crampton Bowl. It's escaping me now, but the multiplex, excuse me.
Multiplex. Yeah.
So the multiplex is an area that we think we can get more use out of. And because of its size, we think it provides us a type of space that we need for any number of events that we wouldn't put in the Garrett Coliseum or we wouldn't put in the Civic Center. And we want to make sure that as we look at these initiatives, we're getting feedback from the community, that we're holding some forums to see what the community wants, both online and in person, when we can get back to doing that safely. And that's something that we want to make sure is a two-way street before we get too far into what we think is best. We want to know what the public really would like to see us do. Very
good. Let us know when you want to do that, and we'll help get some of that information out. When you're talking about the community centers too, could this be a place where people can get access to broadband services and to internet when they need it?
Absolutely. We think that's very important for all of our communities. When we think about not only economic development, but when we think about improving how people interact socially now, it's much different. There's not as much in person, even pre-COVID. There are things that people are doing now online. They're meditating online. They may not go to a yoga studio. They may be doing that at home. They're learning how to cook online as opposed to maybe going somewhere for an in-person cooking class. So when we think about how people communicate, it's important that broadband access be a major part of our initiatives, and something that we are taking very seriously in our tech initiatives and how we move forward where that's concerned. Because for us, we think that's a big part of providing more equitable neighborhood, and we believe that is part of the quality of life that we have to improve for many of our residents here in Montgomery.
Great. I'd like to get into a little bit about the planned development that you have. The recent development over the last several years of downtown has continued and even continued on this year. And you just made an announcement, or an announcement was made in the Montgomery Advertiser this morning about the 5 Points area and the development there. If you could touch on that a little bit.
Well, the 5 Points neighborhood is a historic neighborhood. Is really beautiful for those that are familiar with that. And it is a neighborhood very close to downtown and in West Montgomery that we really think is on the cusp of being revitalized, and reminds me of neighborhoods that I've seen change from other cities that I've lived in Nashville, the 12th Avenue South area, or even in Atlanta in the old Fourth Ward. Where these were in-town historic neighborhoods which had been abandoned for a number of decades, only to see urban pioneers come back in and blend with many longtime neighborhood residents to bring coffee shops, eateries, other places to live, and whether it was Airbnbs or whether it was lofts and new homes, all of those things have been brought into some of those neighborhoods to revitalize them. And so what we're trying to do is to make it as easy as we can for the developers and those in the neighborhood to really put into place what they want to put into place, and we want to get out of the way. We think that's how it best works, and that's the best plan that we've seen is when things happen organically. We just want to be able to incentivize that and maybe be an accelerator for what those plans may be. But there are some fantastic announcements with the 5 Points neighborhood is concerned, with the barbershop and the coffee shop and restaurants. And I know there's some developers who have plans for apartments and condos as well.
Well, I think that makes, when you're building these kind of neighborhood hubs, people can actually, it makes it easier to get access to things that they might need or places that they might like to go for recreation. So I like the revitalization, and it really does bring on some new things to different neighborhoods and causes that revitalization throughout the whole neighborhood.
I agree. And that helps because it then spreads to other in-town neighborhoods. And so people don't feel like the only place they can go is a new planned urban subdivision, but it is something where in the historic neighborhoods can kind of take on that character they once had and that feel of being really tied into the city and tied into many things that you see happening all across America right now as more urban communities are being redeveloped and are being re-inhabited by new residents. It really has brought a lot of life to a lot of cities, and we're just glad to play a role in that in 5 Points. And there's some plans for other neighborhoods going forward as well. How
has COVID-19 affected plans and affected development, such as maybe the water park? I don't know if it's affected it or not, the timetable for that. But talk a little bit about that.
Well, it certainly has affected all of the above that you mentioned. I think anytime that the public sector and private sector have to press pause on the economy, then that impacts everything. And so it has slowed down some of the development downtown Montgomery, and it has certainly slowed down some of the development in other parts of the city as well, just because everyone wasn't sure what the economic impact would be. And we've taken that approach here at the city, and that's what kept us from having to go into our savings, our reserves, or to borrow any money, because we were proactive in that. And I think some of the businesses and some of the developers have done the same thing. Now, we hope that by maybe mid-year next year, we'll start to see some positive growth and movement that will help us get back on track with some of the plans that we had for various neighborhoods and various parts of the city. But we just thought it was prudent for us to slow things down for probably the last 6 months or so before we could really start to think about moving forward in a post-COVID world.
Okay. We have another question, and it goes back to COVID. We have a few that came up from that, and one is from Candy Williams, who says, how will the city keep older adults safe as COVID-19 continues? What services are there to help those that may need extra help during this time?
Well, one, we're providing warming centers for people who may not have access to heat in their homes. We're working with other civic organizations and nonprofits to be aware of food insecurity that exists for many people around this community. And we want to make sure that we're working with organizations such as AARP and others to stay engaged of ways that how government can be an amplifier to messages that need to get out to our seniors and to various residents here in the city. Public safety is an issue for everyone, regardless of their age. And we're certainly concerned about how our seniors are feeling about the city. We want everyone to feel safe here. And so we just announced last week prior to Thanksgiving that our police will be taking a different approach over these next few months to combating crime. And again, although our overall crime numbers are down almost 20%, we realize that violent crime is what makes the headlines. And so we have to be more proactive in bringing in our community leaders, bringing in our neighborhood leaders, bringing in our faith leaders for different ideas and initiatives that we can do to make sure that our police men and women are really up to speed on what's happening in neighborhoods. And in particular, if seniors are being targeted, even through financial scams or other type of scams that may put them in harm's way. So we're proud of our partnerships with the U.S. Attorney's Office and in working with the district attorney as well to make sure that everything we can do from the city side to try to help educate and inform seniors about how to be safe in their homes, what things to watch out for, particularly during the holiday season, that we can do.
Great. And we'll be happy to provide you with some information. We have some great fraud information that we can provide. Bill Hawkins asked, are there any plans to use community centers for immunizations? What are the city plans? What are city plans for immunization and how does that work?
Not at this time. Most of that runs through the public health department, and most of that comes from the state. And so we plan to stick to their script in immunizations. And I have not gotten an update since the COVID-19 vaccines have kind of become more well known at this point.
Okay. We did talk about developments. I do want to get to some more about the walking issues and walkability, because I know the city's really working on that. But we have a question from Pam about when we were talking about developments, will the new developments be affordable for low-income disabled?
You know, we're constantly in touch with our housing authority and developers about bringing in more affordable housing. That is a priority for us, and it's something that we are working with the Department of Housing and Urban Development to bring more of that to Montgomery. And so right now we're in the early stages of that process, but it's something that we are actively working to land a choice neighborhood grant, which would help us in this area if we were successful in doing that. And then we're trying to work with other developers to get a sense of what their vision is when they come to Montgomery and in certain aspects of it. I'll also tell you this, that we have a good start with potentially a major development that would address those issues. It would be affordable housing. It would encompass an education component, and it would encompass a health component as well, all in a self-contained neighborhood. I'm not at liberty to go much further than that, but we have very strong momentum there, and I would hope after the new year we might have something that we can announce at that time.
Oh, wonderful. We have one more question from Barbara Peters, who would like to know, what are you doing for homeless people, and maybe especially during this time when it's so cold and during COVID in that time?
Well, that's exactly what we're providing the warming centers, like at the Montgomery Therapeutic Center right now. Many of our shelters have had to reduce their capacity to comply with COVID restrictions. So we're trying to make up there, and we're trying to work with other agencies here to figure out how we can be helpful to those who are experiencing homelessness, whether that is opening up some of our other facilities or whether that is providing transportation or food and things of the like that might be of assistance to them. And Phil Ensler, who's our senior policy, has taken a tremendous lead on that. And we hope that we can continue to do more as we go through this winter season that we're in right now.
Okay. I do want to get to now some quality of life in Montgomery, because that's part of that comprehensive plan, and you've touched on that already. Montgomery.
And let me throw this. Yeah. Let me just interrupt very quickly. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to jump off in a couple of minutes here for actually a Salvation Army meeting that we have at 10:30 at another location. So I want to make sure that if there's any specific questions that kind of stand out to your members, that we can address those before I have to leave to take that next meeting.
Okay. Well, I think we're pretty good now. Okay. And you've touched on everything. I would like for you to tell me a little bit about your wife's initiative, the Move Montgomery, because that, we're talking about walkability and access to things and health. And that's, if you could just mention that a little bit, I think that would be a nice thing to end with. And then also kind of where you would like what you would like to see for the coming year in Montgomery.
Well, thank you. I will say this, and I'm sure your daughter, Rebecca, will have some good feedback for us in terms of where we go next year in Montgomery, as she's a member of our Mayor's Young Professional Council. We're going to be leaning on them to give us some great ideas that we may not think of ourselves. As I tell people, we are not the author of all innovation or implementation here. We want to hear from our citizens and our residents here to give us their thoughts on how we can be a better city overall. The walking part is very key. We're going to have a major announcement in the next 2 weeks on our public transportation, which will address some of the accessibility issues that I think have been brought up and are of concern to some of your members and certainly members of the larger community. But the walkability part is also something that we're trying to encompass in our new development. It is a big part of our Envision 2040 plan, and it is something that we've already been approached with to create more walking trails that connect the neighborhoods. If you go to other cities, many of us have experienced that, whether it's the Beltline in Atlanta or whether it's some of the walking trails in suburban DC and parts of Bethesda, Maryland, and others. When you're in a lot of these cities, you kind of see these trails that have been created, and we certainly want to connect our city through walking trails. However, one of the things that we did have to pause was some of the plans that were moving forward on just some of the studies. So that's one of those things that we did not deem as essential right now, that we had to just kind of table for the moment until we can get things back on solid financial footing. So we do want to make sure that we bring that back into focus as the economy starts to stabilize, not only for governments around the country, but also the private sector. And if I can put in a plug, as the new administration comes in, and really we don't have to wait for the new administration, feel free to call either of our senators and ask for them to pass the COVID relief bill that would go directly to cities. That would help cities like Montgomery stabilize our economy, which plays such an important role, not just for basic services, but to incentivize many of the amenities that we would like to have. So all the mayors around the country, and governors for that matter, have a big incentive, and we're all watching to see what our United States Congress does with this COVID relief bill, because we need it just as much as our small businesses do. And so we believe all those things combined puts us in a better position moving forward. And as for my vision for next year, we want to be very aggressive as it relates to public safety by strengthening our partnerships with federal law enforcement, but also strengthening our ability to use technology to help us battle crime and to make this a safer city. That is truly a priority for us, because we know that a safer city is a healthier city, and a healthier city is a more viable city. And those are things that are very important, along with our economic development projects, and hopefully then getting back to strengthen some of our efficiencies in government to make sure that we're doing things smarter and not just working harder where that is concerned. And so from our perspective, that's kind of a big key. And I will end with where you started the conversation. The Move Montgomery is an initiative that my wife and others, Elizabeth Mazik and a few others, have kind of kicked off here to really get seniors, professionals, younger people out of their homes, off of our smartphones, and doing things outside and doing things that create a healthier lifestyle here in Montgomery, whether that be mental health, spiritual health, and physical health. Move Montgomery aims to really bring people together around various events and initiatives, healthy eating, healthier practices, everyday physical practices, to make sure that there's a community of people to try to push that narrative for us to live a healthier lifestyle through exercise and through various interactions. So they had a great start out at the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts and the Shakespeare Festival over at Blount Cultural Park. There have been some follow-up initiatives since then, and I know they're doing competitions regarding weigh-ins. I hope there's not a weigh-in post-Thanksgiving right now. So I don't think I would pass that. but hopefully they can hold off the weigh-ins until maybe we get through these Christmas holidays. But Tamika is doing a great job along with Elizabeth and Joe Geis and others in the Move Montgomery initiative. And they've gotten so much support that it really shows that a number of people here, young and a little bit older, who are looking to participate in a group such as this and really want to see that community of healthy living throughout the city.
Terrific. Yeah, healthy Montgomery is a vital Montgomery. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know you're really busy. We really appreciate it. Let us know how we can support your efforts.
Thank you so much. I look forward to coming back on and talking with you again soon. And thanks to AARP for all that you do and for all of your members. We really appreciate your advocacy and anything that you think that we can do here from the city side. Please don't hesitate to let us know and reach out to this office so that we need to have a meeting or a sit down with our policy advisors, our legal team, or whomever it may be. We're always open to listen to your feedback and some of your ideas of how to make Montgomery better for your members and for the members of this community at large.
Thank you very much. I'll be calling you this afternoon.
All right.
Okay, here we've got so everybody who's listening, we have stay tuned for a video that you can see what our upcoming events. And thank you again, Mayor.
Thank you for having me. Take care and have a great